Another huge story we're following is Facebook and its supposed crackdown on fake news media. Today we're learning that journalists acting as fact checkers for the social media network have pushed to end their partnership with the website, saying this, quote, "The company has ignored concerns and failed to use their expertise to combat misinformation." In short, they're calling Facebook's war on fake news a big sham. Current and former Facebook fact checkers reportedly said Facebook's collaboration with outside journalists have produced minimal results. They say they've lost trust in the site after repeated refusals to release meaningful data about the impacts of their work. And Brooke Binkowski, a former managing editor of Snopes, a fact-checking site that partnered with Facebook in the past, went as far as to say that Facebook, quote, essentially used us for crisis PR. They're not taking anything seriously. They are more interested in making themselves look good and passing the buck. They clearly don't care. Facebook began building partnerships to fight circulation of fake news stories after the 2016 election. Now more than 40 media partners across the globe wide. Joining me now with more Facebook and media censorship in question, we're being joined by investigative journalist Ben Swan. So Ben, it appears from multiple sources now that the Facebook fact-checking process is a whole bunch of hoopla. Editors, for example, at one of their partners, ABC News Digital, say that they only edited a dozen or so items the whole time that they were brought on board. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so look, you know that I have been very critical of Facebook over the last few months for what seems to be this purge of independent voices, for a lot of their behavior, really since the last couple of years. But I think in this case, I'm actually going to defend a little bit of what Facebook has done. And that's because a lot of these fact-checking sites, if you look at why they are critical of Facebook, it's because they think Facebook didn't act fast enough, or Facebook didn't take down every story they wanted them to take down. And when you have entities like Snopes, and I'm not a big fan of Snopes because there's information on Snopes that's not good information, and many times it's very political, acting as the guardian for what is true and what is not, I think there are some major concerns there.
Now, Facebook says that their way of tagging or debunking the so-called fake news has brought down the impressions of them, at least, by around 80%. Isn't that helping, or is this, to you, do you see this kind of like as a censorship problem?
Well, I do see it as a censorship problem. See, here's the problem is what constitutes fake news. A quick example for you. So there was a story that was done months ago by, I believe it was the Anti-Media, and they essentially released a report saying that many of these migrant families that were on the border were being housed in an old Walmart. It's not a Walmart anymore. It's been shut down, and DHS has taken over this building, and they're housing immigrants in it. And the point of mentioning the Walmart was so people would understand the scope and the size of this building. Well, the AP and a couple of other of these fact checkers looked at the story and said, well, this is not true. They're not being held in a Walmart, even though that's not what the article said.
Right.
And they flagged it as false. And then they began to penalize all the other media who had shared this particular story. The story was not incorrect. It was factually right. And the other folks who were sharing it were not wrong in what they were sharing. But because this one specific group of designated authorities of fact checkers and those who would decide what is fake news decided it was fake, the story gets taken down. And so that's my problem with it, is there is a censorship there among these groups that they may not be reliable.
But Ben, couldn't they argue, though, that they're not really censoring it because they're still allowing it to be published? They're just driving down the impression rate.
Which is censorship, right? And it's the worst kind of censorship, because those who put those stories up can't even tell that their story isn't reaching anyone. So I hear from people all the time who will say they'll be on Facebook, they'll be looking at content, and all of a sudden it just vanishes right in front of their eyes when they go to click on it, and they have to go search out the page where it originated from. The reality is that when you drive down the when you drive down the impressions on any kind of a story, it's essentially just shadow banning. You don't know you're being banned. You don't know that nobody's seeing your content. And remember, these are pages that have fans, which means people have specifically told Facebook, I want to see this content. And they're being told by, again, these groups like Snopes, no, you really can't see them because we don't deem them as an authority. And let's not forget, Atlantic Council, Media Matters Times for America, the groups that are really kind of driving who's allowed to have a voice and who's not are very suspect in and of themselves.
But, you know, Ben, the irony here is that Facebook is also coming under fire from a few of those fact checkers themselves. They're saying that Facebook has themselves taken to the media spin cycle by hiring a DC PR firm to essentially badmouth their critics. But it's unclear, though, if they mean critics like on Capitol Hill, meaning the lawmakers, or meaning the general public. But Facebook did hire a PR firm to help spin this story. What do you make of that?
Yeah, and so in that case, I won't defend Facebook, right? So this is an instance where Facebook essentially went out and they hired this PR firm and tried to basically smear it as George Soros is attacking Facebook. For whatever reason, they came up with a strategy, which was a ridiculous strategy. The bottom line is Facebook doesn't need to go out and hire a PR firm to defend themselves. Again, I said this before. I'm hoping one of these days Zuck will be watching your show, Manila, because I'm sure he's a fan. And as he's watching, he's going to hear me say this, but Facebook needs to become a voice of free speech. If Facebook would shift back in that direction and say, let's stop with the PR firms, let's stop trying to defend our position, and let's just be open as possible. If we want to create fact checking, let's make it diverse fact checking, and let's make it transparent as to who is saying that a story is not true and why. Right, and none of that process has been put into place either by Facebook or by these supposed fact checkers from the AP. They're not putting in place any system by which the public can say, oh, I can see why you're saying this is fake. That doesn't exist. Ben Swann, as always, happy to get your take on all of this. Thank you so much, Ben Swann. Thanks, Manila.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.